Hello everyone, this is Miss Osteen. Today I want to go over your Chapter 2, Lesson 1 workbook page that you were assigned on September the 29th. Now it was assigned to you via Google Classroom, but I'm going to go over it using this workbook that my students in class are using, and I'm going to go through every question with you and write in the answers to make sure you understand what the question is asking. So let's start with number 1. Of course, before I start with number 1, Chapter 2, Lesson 1 starts with page 37 and goes all the way to page 47. And if you remember, I posted pictures of these pages in my Google Classroom, and I did it like a couple weeks ago. It should be under Chapter 2, Lesson 1. And if you'll look there, you'll find the pages. Alright, let's start with number 1. Use the web organizer below to show how rivers and oceans influence life in Europe. Now, you did not have to put answers here and here. Some people chose to put their answers up here in the blanks because the ovals were too small, and then some people chose to just put their answers down here, and then some of my students chose to do both. It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go over one with you. If you look at page 37, it talks about rivers and seas at the bottom, and it goes over to page 38. It says rivers also played an important role in Europe's growth. Major rivers such as the Rhine, Danube, Seine, and Po flow from inland mountains into the oceans and seas surrounding the continent. These rivers are navigable or wide and deep enough for ships to use. People and goods can sail easily from inland areas to the open sea and from there to other parts of the world. Okay. It talks about on the other side, on page 38, that the Europe's seas and rivers provided protection as well as possibilities for trade. So that's two things I would definitely write in here. I would write in protection and I would write in trade. Okay. It talks about the English Channel, for example, separated the islands, so they were separated of Britain and Ireland from the rest of Europe. As a result, these people were far enough away to be largely safe from the many wars fought on Europe's homeland, or mainland, excuse me. So we've already written protection. Okay, moving on. It says they were able to develop their own governments and societies. In mainland Europe, wide rivers like the Rhine also kept groups of people separated. Because of this separation and isolation, many different cultures developed. So that's another one that you can add, is many different cultures developed. Now, when I filled this out, I put my answers up here just because I would have more room. Okay, so we need one more answer. It says Europe also has many mountain ranges, which all right, we're going to stop there. We're not going to talk about the mountains. Also, it talked about traveling, so it enabled people to travel the oceans to find new lands. So exploration could be one. Okay, protection, trade, many different cultures developed, travel the oceans to find new lands. I started to talk about the mountains just a second ago, but I'll go back and talk about that when we go over your guided reading questions. Okay? Question number 2, how did the Franks differ from the Vikings? And if you look at page 43, let's go back to page 40. It says the Franks were the strongest Germanic group. They settled what is now France and Western Germany. So the Franks were a strong Germanic group. They settled in what is now France and Western Germany. So how are they different from the Vikings? The Vikings were primarily raiders. So it says in this last paragraph on page 43, the Vikings were more than just raiders. So they were raiders, so that made them different, but they also were explorers and settlers. Okay? So if you go back to page 40, where it talked about the Franks, I wrote down, talking about it with my children, my students in class, that the Franks established a Christian kingdom in Central Europe. They fought to protect it from invasions. With the help of the Catholic Pope, they expanded their empire. So I don't expect you to write all of that, but if you wanted to say something like the Franks were the strongest Germanic group they settled what is now France and Western, let me turn this around, and Western Germany. Now to talk about the Vikings, like it said over here, it talked about how they would raid other people's belongings, and anything they could not take with them they would burn. But they were mainly, primarily raiders, but they also did create settlements as well. Okay, so I'm just going to say that the Vikings were primarily raiders in Europe, but did create settlements. In Normandy and other lands. Okay. All right. Question number 3 said, how did the growth of the communities of monks and nuns help spread Christianity? Well, it talks about monks and nuns on page 46. So if you look at those two paragraphs, it says monks lived in monasteries. Monasteries served as schools and hospitals. Monks taught carpentry and weaving, and they developed improvements in farming. Many monks copied Christian writings as well as Roman and Greek works. They also made illuminations, which are manuscripts decorated with beautiful lettering and miniature religious paintings. These monks helped preserve knowledge of the classical and early Christian worlds. Each monastery produced goods and owned land. Over time, many monasteries became wealthy. Okay? Then it talked about monks lived in communities headed by abbots. Women called nuns lived in their own monasteries called convents. Convents were headed by abbesses. And this right here was in your bell ringer today. Okay? All right, so the question is, how did the growth of the communities of monks and nuns help spread Christianity? One thing that we talked about in class is that the monks and nuns share their information about Christianity. They became missionaries. We know missionaries go about and spread the gospel. They were active in political affairs. They influenced rulers to make Catholic religion part of society. They were just an active part of society. Okay? So let's just say monks and nuns. And if you have something like this is fine. I'm just writing something down for you to show you one thing that you could write down. You could have a variety of answers that are similar to what I have. They shared information about Christianity. They became missionaries. Once again, missionaries are people who travel the country or out of the country to share the gospel. Okay. Oops. All right, Hold on just a minute. There we go. There we go. They were also just active. They were an active part of society. Okay. Last question. What was the conflict that led Pope Gregory VII to excommunicate the Holy Roman Emperor of Europe, Henry IV, and how was the conflict resolved? So we're looking for the cause and the effect. Pope Gregory VII excommunicated Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV. Why did he do it? What was the effect? And that is discussed on pages 46 and 47. If you remember, excommunicate is, or was a vocabulary word that we had in chapter 1. Okay. If you look at page 46, I'm going to jump down to where it talks about excommunicate. For many years, the Holy Roman Emperor had chosen bishops in Germany. Henry insisted on naming his own bishops. Gregory then declared that Henry was no longer emperor and excommunicated him. This meant that he no longer had the rights of church membership and could not go to heaven. Okay? So, what was the cause of him being excommunicated? Henry IV wanted the power to appoint church officials, and the Pope objected. So because of that, Pope Gregory VII excommunicated the Holy Roman Emperor Henry IV. And what was the effect? If you look at page 47, let's go ahead and read the last paragraph of page 46. When the German nobles supported the Pope, Henry changed his mind. He traveled to Italy and begged the Pope for forgiveness. Gregory forgave Henry, but the German nobles chose a new emperor. When Gregory accepted the new emperor, Henry seized Rome and named a new pope, Clement III. Church cardinals continued electing their own popes during this time, page 47. The struggle continued until 1122, when a new German king and a new pope agreed that only the pope could choose bishops, but only the king or emperor could give them government posts. This agreement, called the Concordat of Worms, was signed in the German city of Worms, and the Concordat means an agreement between the Pope and the ruler of a country. So what was the effect? Well, we know that the Concordat of Worms was signed agreeing to a compromise. Okay. So that is all of workbook pages 24 and 25. Remember, this was assigned on September the 29th. You only had 4 questions to complete. So if you have not completed this yet, I encourage you to go ahead and get that completed, because I will be grading these very soon. Thank you. Y'all have a good day.